It had been years since John had thought about Michael. Decades, really. The days of their shared childhood, running through the small town streets, climbing trees, and dreaming about the future, seemed like a different lifetime. Now, John was a middle-aged man, deep in the routine of work and family. His life was stable, predictable, and occasionally, he admitted to himself, a little dull. But it was his life. He had built it over the years, brick by brick, and he had few regrets. His job as an accountant paid the bills, and his family, including his wife and 2 children, brought him joy. Yet in quiet moments, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Until that day, the day an unexpected message arrived. John was sitting in his small home office, sifting through emails when he saw a notification. The sender's name stopped him cold: Michael Greaves. He hadn't heard that name in over 30 years. For a moment, he just stared at the screen, his heart inexplicably racing. Memories flooded back. Summer days spent laughing, late-night talks under the stars, the dreams they had shared about conquering the world together. After high school, Michael had left town to travel, always seeking adventure, while John had stayed, choosing a more traditional path. Over time, they lost contact. Finally, he clicked on the message. "John, it's been too long. I hope you're doing well. I know this message is out of the blue, but I've been thinking about the old days a lot lately. I'd love to catch up if you're open to it. Let me know. Mike." The casual tone of the message felt oddly comforting, yet it carried the weight of years lost. John leaned back in his chair, reflecting on the last time they had spoken. It had been a brief phone call during Michael's travels in Europe, where he was excitedly recounting tales of new experiences. John had been engaged to Susan then, building a career while Michael was chasing freedom. They exchanged pleasantries, but there was a growing distance in their lives, a gap that had widened over time. Days passed before he found himself typing a response. "Mike, I got your message. I'd love to catch up. How about next weekend?" The thought of seeing Michael again ignited a mixture of excitement and apprehension within him. What had happened in those years apart? How much had they both changed? When Saturday arrived, John found himself standing in front of the mirror, nervously adjusting his shirt. As he drove to the cafe where they had agreed to meet, his mind raced with questions. What would they talk about? Would it be awkward? He parked and entered the cafe, a quaint place filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. John arrived early, settling into a corner table near the window, watching the world outside. The memories of their youth played like a movie in his mind, climbing trees, exploring the woods, and sharing dreams of their futures. Would Michael even recognize him? Would he recognize Michael? The doorbell chimed, pulling him from his thoughts. A man walked in, his hair graying at the edges, wearing a leather jacket that seemed slightly out of place. But there was no mistaking it. That was Michael. John stood, and for a moment, they just stared at each other, the weight of years hanging between them. The initial shock melted into a smile. "John, it's good to see you," Michael said, pulling him into an embrace. "You too, Mike? It's been a long time," John replied, feeling the warmth of their connection. They sat down, ordering drinks, and for the first few minutes, the conversation felt a little stiff, as if they were both unsure how to bridge the gap of years. But soon, the ice began to break, and they found themselves sharing stories, laughter bubbling to the surface. "Do you remember that summer we spent by the lake?" Michael asked, laughter lighting up his eyes. "The one where we tried to build that raft?" John chuckled, shaking his head, "and it sank in less than 5 minutes. I can still hear us splashing around, trying to save it. Right? We were so determined to make it work. I think we spent the whole week trying to fix it, even though we had no idea what we were doing," Michael said, his voice filled with nostalgia. Those memories were so clear, so vivid, that for a moment, John could almost feel the warm sun on his skin and hear the laughter of his younger self. They talked about their adventures, mischief, and the dreams they had shared. But as the conversation progressed, the mood shifted. The years of separation weighed heavily on them, and they began to explore the paths their lives had taken. "So, what happened after you left town?" John asked, curiosity piquing. Michael hesitated, swirling his drink thoughtfully. "I wanted to travel, see the world, and I did. I went to Europe, Asia, South America. It was everything I dreamed of, but it wasn't what I expected." John nodded, feeling a pang of empathy. "I think I know what you mean. I stayed here, built a life, family, job, home, but sometimes I wonder if I missed out. I've had my share of regrets too." Michael leaned forward, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I loved the experiences, but somewhere along the way, I lost track of what I really wanted. I thought freedom was everything, but I didn't realize how much I was leaving behind: relationships, stability, things that matter. After a while, all the traveling felt empty." "That's the irony of it," John said quietly. "I could have reached out too. I didn't. We both let it happen." "Maybe we both had to find our way back," Michael replied softly. They fell into a comfortable silence, reflecting on their choices and the lives they had built. It was clear they both had regrets, but there was also a sense of understanding that came with maturity. As the afternoon turned into evening and the cafe began to empty, Michael leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. I never realized how much our friendship shaped me. Even when I was on the other side of the world, I thought about the things we used to talk about, the way we dreamed of what our lives would be like." John nodded, understanding exactly what Michael meant. "Same here. I've often thought about you over the years, wondering where you ended up. It's funny how something from so long ago can still be so important." They left the cafe together, walking through the streets of their old hometown, the same streets they had once run through as boys. The town had changed, and so had they, but the connection between them remained. They reminisced about their favorite hangouts, the local diner where they used to grab milkshakes, and the park where they had shared countless laughs. As they reached the fork in the road where they would part ways, Michael looked at John, a glint of sincerity in his eyes. "Let's not wait another 30 years to do this again." John smiled, feeling a warmth spreading through him. "Deal." As he drove home that night, John felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: a sense of peace. He realized that life was about more than the choices they had made, the roads they had taken. It was about the connections they had, the friendships that shaped them, even when they had been out of sight for so long. Some things, it seemed, were never truly lost.